Hi, welcome back to my book club. If you're new here, hi, my name's Hunter. I'm a therapist, and together we're reading The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. If you need caught up on the previous videos, head to the link in the description. And for today's video, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more videos like this. Today we're reading Chapter 3, The Black Hole of Control. The chapter actually starts with a continuation from our very first chapter, where Harris talked about different myths of happiness. The first one was happiness is our natural state. The second was if you aren't happy, you are defective. And now, myth three, it's easy to control what you think and feel. One of the most popular claims you'll encounter is this: if you repeatedly challenge your negative thoughts and instead fill your head with positive ones, you will be happy, confident, and successful. The fact is, we have much less control over our thoughts and feelings than we would like. And as we saw in Chapter 1, our minds have evolved over 300,000 years to think the way they do. The same holds true for uncomfortable emotions such as anger, fear, sadness, guilt, and shame. There are multitudes of psychological strategies to get rid of such feelings. You can make them go away temporarily, but after a while, they're back. I'm guessing you've already spent a lot of time and effort trying to have good feelings and positive thoughts instead of those bad or negative ones. The more stressed you are, the more difficult the situation you're in, the less ability you have to control your thoughts and feelings. In really difficult situations, when life hits you hard, you simply can't expect to feel happy. Sadly, this myth is so deeply entrenched in our culture that we tend to feel stupid, weak, or inadequate when our attempts to control our thoughts and feelings fail. This raises the question: how did this myth get established in the first place? The illusion of control. The mind enables us to shape the world around us and conform it to our wishes. Not surprisingly, this amazing ability to control our external environment gives us high expectations of control in other areas as well. If we don't like something, we figure out how to avoid it or get rid of it. How much control do we have over our inner world, over our thoughts, memories, emotions, urges, and sensations? Here's a little experiment. Try not to think about ice cream. Don't think about the color or the texture. Don't think about how it tastes on a hot summer's day. Don't think about how good it feels as it melts inside your mouth. Stare at the floor and try not to think about ice cream. How'd you do? Exactly. You couldn't stop thinking about ice cream. Harris has a little note at the bottom about what they just said. A tiny number of people manage briefly to suppress thoughts about ice cream by thinking about something else. This is not good. A huge amount of research on thought suppression shows that, in the long term, such methods not only fail, but have a rebound effect, leading to an increase in frequency and intensity of the very thoughts you're trying to avoid. We will explore this in later chapters. Another thought experiment for you. Suppose I'm a mad scientist and I've wired you up to the world's most sensitive lie detector on a big red lever attached to a massive electrical generator. And with a mad cackle, I inform you, in this experiment I'm about to do on you, you must not feel any anxiety whatsoever. Because if you do, I will pull this lever, which will electrocute you with 1 million volts. What would happen? You'd be fried, right? Even though your life depends on it, you cannot stop yourself from feeling anxious. Hopefully, you're getting the point. Our thoughts and feelings are not that easy to control. We do have some control over these things, but it's so much less than we want. Which begs the question: how we learn about emotional control. From a young age, we are taught that we should be able to control how we feel, saying things like, don't be so gloomy, look on the bright side, think positive, or don't be scared. With words such as these, the adults around us sent out a message that we ought to be able to control our feelings. And certainly it appeared to us as if they controlled theirs. In all likelihood, many of those adults weren't coping well with their own painful feelings. The idea that we should be able to control our feelings is strongly reinforced in our school years. You probably heard phrases such as, get over it, deal with it, don't worry about it. These phrases imply that we should be able to turn our feelings on and off at will. This myth is compelling because many people around us seem, on the surface, to be happy. The fact is that most people are not open or honest about the struggle they go through with their own thoughts and feelings. Here's an example. Penny, a 30-year-old receptionist, came to Harris 6 months after the birth of her first child. She was feeling tired, anxious, and full of self-doubt about her mothering skills. Although Penny attended regular mothers' group meetings, she kept her problems a secret. The other mothers all seemed so confident. She feared that if she told them how she was feeling, they would look down on her. When Penny eventually plucked up the courage to share her experiences with the other women, her admission broke a conspiracy of silence. They'd all been putting on the same act of bravado, hiding their true feelings for fear of disapproval or rejection. As we grow up, many of us are taught to bottle up painful feelings and hide them from others. As a result, most of us are reluctant to tell our friends and family when we are feeling sad or anxious or not coping in some way, for fear of being judged. Our silence simply adds to the powerful illusion of emotional control. So why is it important to dispel this myth? To answer that, let's consider, what's your problem? Presumably, if you're reading this book or watching this video, there's room for your life to improve. Whatever the problem is, it undoubtedly gives rise to unpleasant thoughts and feelings. You've probably spent a lot of time and effort in struggle mode. Suppose that struggle against your bad thoughts and feelings is actually making your life worse. In ACT, we have a saying for this. The solution is the problem. Think of this. What do you do when you have an itch? You scratch it, right? Scratch the itch and then it goes away. Problem solved. But suppose one day you develop a patch of eczema. The skin is very itchy, so naturally you scratch it. In the short term, there's relief, but in the long term, it gets even worse. The more you scratch, the worse the eczema, the greater the itchiness. This is commonly known as a vicious cycle, and in the world of human emotions, vicious cycles are common. Here's one example I wanted to highlight. There's a built-up tension between Alexei and his wife Silvana. Silvana is angry at Alexei because he works long hours and doesn't spend enough time with her. Alexei doesn't like those feelings of tension in the house, so to avoid them, he starts working longer hours. But the more hours he works, the more dissatisfied Silvana becomes, and the tension in their relationship steadily increases. You can see that these are examples of struggle, trying hard to avoid, get rid of, or escape from unwanted thoughts and feelings. Below, Harris has organized some of the most common struggle strategies into two main categories, fight and flight. Fight strategies involve fighting with unwanted thoughts and feelings. Flight strategies involve avoiding them. Fight strategies. Suppression. You try to directly suppress unwanted thoughts and feelings. Arguing. You argue with your own thoughts. Taking charge. You try forcing yourself to be happy when you're not. And self-judgment. You use harsh self-judgment to try and bully yourself into feeling differently. Flight strategies. Opting out. You opt out of situations that tend to trigger uncomfortable thoughts or feelings. Distraction. You distract yourself from your thoughts and feelings by focusing on something else. And substances. You try to avoid or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings using substances. The problem with struggle strategies. What's the problem with using these methods? The answer is nothing if we use them sensibly, appropriately, and in moderation. We use them in situations where they can realistically work, and using them doesn't stop us from behaving like the sort of person we want to be. However, struggle strategies become problematic when we use them excessively. We use them in situations where they can't work, or using them stops us from doing things that matter to us. To varying degrees, every one of us uses struggle strategies to avoid unwanted thoughts and feelings. And in moderation, this is no big deal. If you're worried about upcoming exams, you might try to distract yourself from your anxiety by watching TV. Now that's fine if you're only doing it every now and again. But if you do it too much, you'll spend all of your evenings watching TV and you won't get any studying done. This, in turn, will create more anxiety as your studies lag further and further behind. Using struggle strategies in situations where they can't work. If we love somebody deeply and we lose that relationship, we will feel a whole range of painful emotions: anger, sadness, anxiety, guilt, loneliness, despair, or fear. Such feelings are normal reactions to any significant loss, whether a loved one, a job, or a limb. Unfortunately, rather than allowing ourselves to feel all those perfectly normal emotions, many of us do what we can to push them away. But no matter how hard we try to push these feelings away, deep down inside, they are still there. Here's an example. Donna was 20 years of age when her husband and child died in a tragic car crash. Naturally, she felt an explosion of sadness, fear, loneliness, and despair. But Donna didn't know how to effectively handle those painful feelings, so she turned to alcohol to push them away. By the time Donna came to Harris 6 months later, she was knocking back almost 2 bottles of wine a day. The biggest factor in her recovery was her willingness to stop running away from her pain. Only when she learned how to open up and make room for her feelings was she able to come to terms with her terrible loss. When struggle strategies prevent us from doing what matters. What domains of life are important to you? Health, work, family, friends, religion, sports, or nature? Life is richer and more fulfilling when we actively invest our time and energy in the aspects of life that are most important to us. Yet all too often our attempts to avoid unpleasant feelings get in the way of doing what truly matters to us. How much control do we actually have? The degree of control we have over our thoughts and feelings depends largely on how intense they are and what situation we are in. The less intense the emotions and the less stressful the situation, the more control we have. For instance, if we're dealing with typical everyday stress and we're in a safe, comfortable environment, such as our bedroom, then a simple relaxation technique can often make us feel calmer right away. However, the more intense our thoughts and feelings are, the less effective our attempts at control will be. While you can act calmly in those situations, you will not feel relaxed, no matter how hard you practice your relaxation techniques. We also have more control over our thoughts and feelings when the things we're avoiding aren't too important. Because many of the things we avoid are not important, we find that our struggle strategies can often make us feel better, at least for a little while. Unfortunately, though, this leads us to believe we have much more emotional control than we actually do. Disclaimer: no one likes feeling bad, so naturally, we all try to avoid or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance, the ongoing attempt to avoid or get rid of unwanted inner experiences. Experiential avoidance is normal, and in low levels, it is not a problem. But a high level of experiential avoidance comes with 3 big costs. When used excessively, these strategies eat up a lot of time and energy that could be invested in more meaningful activities. We may feel hopeless, frustrated, or inadequate because although we're trying very hard to get rid of them, those unwanted thoughts and feelings keep coming back. When used excessively or inappropriately, many struggle strategies lower our quality of life over the long term. These unwanted outcomes lead to more unpleasant feelings. It's a vicious cycle. It's worth noting that sometimes struggle strategies are automatic and unconscious. For example, the vagus nerve, the second largest nerve in the body, can literally numb us. It actually cuts off our feelings to spare us from pain. This isn't a conscious choice. This is simply our nervous system looking after us. In a nutshell. So here's the happiness trap in a nutshell. To increase our happiness, we try hard to avoid or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings. But paradoxically, the more effort we put into the struggle, the more difficult thoughts and feelings we create. It's now time for the exercise. If you need more structure, just like last time, click the link in the description for some printouts, or you can just write this on a piece of paper. Part A, what have you tried? Begin by completing the sentence. The inner experiences I most want to avoid or get rid of are, and then you list them out. Harris has a note. Please do this non-judgmentally, with genuine curiosity. Please do not start judging these methods as good or bad or right and wrong. We don't want to get caught up in judgments. Come up with as many examples as possible, including the following: distractions, such as movies, TV, internet, exercise, or gambling; opting out; doing what you do to try and avoid things; thinking strategies. How do you try to think your pain away, such as worrying, fantasizing about a better future, or talking logically. Include substances, if you take any, and any other strategies. For example, trying meditation, having affairs, picking fights, suicide attempts, staying in bed, or seeing a therapist. Part B, how has this worked in the long term? Many of these struggle strategies give you short-term relief, but consider, do they permanently get rid of those unwanted thoughts and feelings? Part C, what has this cost you? When we overuse or overly rely on these methods, we have significant long-term costs. So consider, when you have excessively or inappropriately used them, what have these methods cost you in terms of health, money, wasted time, relationships, and missed opportunities? Finally, consider this. How many of these methods give you relief from pain in the short term, but keep you stuck in the long term? Please complete all 3 parts of the exercise above before reading on. If you did this exercise thoroughly and were truly honest with yourself, you probably discovered 3 things. 1, you've invested a lot of time and struggle. Number 2, many of these strategies did at times give you short-term relief, but in the long term, they returned. And 3, many of these strategies, when used excessively, have significant costs. Checking in. Pause for a moment and notice how you're feeling. If uncomfortable feelings are showing up for you, rest assured that's normal. Also notice what your mind is saying right now. Is it saying something helpful or encouraging, or not helpful or harmful? If so, rest assured, we all try to distract ourselves. We all opt out of things that are difficult. We all try to think our way out of our pain. It's a vicious cycle which we all get stuck in at times. Not so fast. It's not just the things you do that matter. It's also your motivation for doing them. If you're giving to charity primarily to get rid of thoughts that you're selfish, then chances are you won't get much satisfaction out of these activities. Because when your primary motivation is the avoidance of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, this drains the joy and vitality from what you're doing. So when you do things because they are truly meaningful to you, then we would not classify them as struggle strategies. We would call them values-guided actions. We'll explore this later in chapter 10. And we would expect them to improve your life in the long term. But if these very same actions are mainly motivated by experiential avoidance, then we would call them struggle strategies. The final part. How can we escape the happiness trap? Increasing self-awareness is the first step. Notice all the little things you do each day to avoid or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, and carefully track the consequences. This is important because the faster we can recognize we're stuck in a trap, the faster we can lift ourselves out of it. My biggest takeaway from this chapter was actually having some compassion for yourself. I think feelings of anxiety, guilt, and shame actually keep us in that vicious cycle. So if we give ourselves some grace and some compassion, it can actually help us escape the happiness trap. Thank you so much for reading this chapter with me. Let me know in the comments what you thought was interesting, and subscribe for more videos like this. And tune in next week when we read chapter 4, Dropping the Struggle. I'll see you next week.